Okay, we are ready to start. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, media representatives, dear colleagues, thank you for being with us today in person. Although it is a very small in scale event, we are very conscious of the health measures. That's why we are keeping small for the in-person part. But I also want to thank all of you who are joining us via live stream. Hope you will find this discussion very fruitful and you'll have some good taking points from this event. Namely, the Atlantic Council of Montenegro recognized the need for preparing a comprehensive overview of the security geopolitical situation in the Western Balkan region and all of the situation in the world that is transformed in this region as well. That's why we, with the cooperation of NATO PDD, who financed this project, put together this Western Balkan Security Report that we are going to present today here, and with some key recommendations for policymakers and major stakeholders, for the leaders in this region, but also for other Western partners as well. It is my pleasure to give floor to Professor Pejanovic, who will be able to share with you insights and key points presented in this report. And afterwards, I hope all of you will join us with your comments, questions, and we will open discussion for all of you to hear your thoughts about the report. You had the opportunity to have this first exclusive insight yesterday when we sent the report. Today, a report will be sent to all of our other partners and stakeholders, and wide range lists that Atlantic Council of Montenegro put together for the past 15 years of its existence. So, Professor Pejanovic, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Azra. Good morning, everyone. It's so good to see so many old friends here, new friends as well. And big good morning also to all those who are following us via live streaming. So as Azra said, it's an event we organized as a kind of introduction, I would say, to the flagship event Atlantic Council of Montenegro is organizing yearly, which is To Be Secure Forum. And our idea was to, in the preparation of the forum, to have something on paper which will streamline discussions we are going to have. As you do know, at the To Be Secure Forum, every year we are discussing contemporary security challenges in the whole world, but with a focus on what is happening in our region of the Western Balkans. And the idea was to have a kind of background document which will facilitate the discussions we are having and hopefully the recommendations we might agree upon. So with the full support of the Division of Public Diplomacy of NATO, the team of Atlantic Council worked on this report during this spring. So at the moment when we concluded the document, still things were happening around which haven't been included, but it's a live document and we will be able to update it in the months to come. So generally, what was the idea? The idea was to start from what are the challenges we are facing together when it comes to security. And we started somewhere in 2008 when we did have this huge financial crisis which changed everything. So after that, economical, social crisis follows, and all of them have their impact on political situation and on stability in a number of countries, not to mention our region. So starting from that, we actually wanted to show what are the real consequences in the region of the Western Balkans and each of the country which is in this region. And we thought that it would be very good to have a kind of comprehensive document which will include all the necessary elements which are defining the situation actually. So it's not only security for the sake of security, it's more about everything which is leading to the definition of the state of security in a certain country. So we covered all the important issues, starting from the political situation, economical situation, social situation in each of the countries of the Western Balkans region. When I say each of the country, then I am talking about Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, I'm talking about Montenegro, I'm talking about Serbia, Kosovo, and North Macedonia. Each of them has been actually, I would say, treated separately in a way to have a kind of an overview what has been going on there for the last couple of years and what is the situation right now. While doing that, we started from the point that Western Balkans is today, as it has been in the past in many occasions, at the crossroad of all these different geopolitical trends in a situation where we are having actually very changed geopolitical situation. We are having all these different, I would say, dynamics. We are having a number of situations which are all having their impact on the Western Balkan region because it is where it is geographically. So from that point, we wanted to show how all these trends, when it comes to the shift of the relations between the geopolitical powers, are reflecting on each of the countries in the region. In doing that, we, of course, have taken into account the fact that from the beginning of all these changes, which we are linking somehow to 2008, we did have a situation where it has been showed that liberal democracy is in a certain crisis as such, where the Western values are questioned, where actually it has been showed through the economical crisis and everything which followed that some kind of further evolution of the Western system would be necessary in order to still be accepted by the large part of population as a set of values which are enabling us to have a better and secure life. From that point, we also have taken into account everything which was happening in the last year, starting from the last presidency in the United States, as we do know that for the liberal democracy and the Western democracy and the values which are related with that, the United States is a country we all related to as an example how these things could be further on developed. So the situation wasn't that favorable for all of us which are looking at that side of the ocean, for the whole, I would say, transatlantic partnership, because in the previous presidency of United States, we did have a different political dynamic, which was somehow perceived as politics which might be leading toward the isolationism, towards the lessening the relations with the partners, and that provoked so many worries on this side of the Atlantic Ocean and the doubts whether this kind of partnership will be sustainable, what the implications would be, not to mention our region. So, as I said, being in a position to actually feel these kind of geopolitical changes in the world here in a situation where this space is and this region is still very vulnerable, where security and stability is not something which could be considered as achieved, we are very much susceptible to everything which is going on around. In that sense, we wanted to show how we do perceive these kind of geopolitical influences in this region. To that end, we have been in a kind writing here about all these foreign actors which are having a certain role in our region, in our opinion, of course. We do believe that we've been objective enough, but of course the report is completely open, and you will be able today or in other occasions and among all at the 2BS forum to discuss, to give you a kind of consideration when all these issues are considered. So we've been looking at, of course, United States of America, we've been looking at Russia, we've been looking at China, Turkey, and European Union, of course. So from that point, for each of them, we gave the elements of what might be interesting from the point of evaluating and estimating the possible influences when it comes to each of the country on the countries of the Western Balkan regions. So, as I said, we, of course, starting also from considering what is important for the security, and we do believe that it is important to take into this huge equation another very important partner, which is NATO. Having in mind the history of NATO involvement in the region, there is so many reasons to still believe that further NATO engagement with the countries would be a contribution towards stabilizing the situation around. But on the other side, it is necessary to have a real cooperated, I would say, the engagement, not of the separate partners, but of each of them. When I say that, I first of all think about NATO and the European Union. That is something which is actually of the crucial importance when it comes to our region, from the point of defining a kind of shared and strategy of these very important actors we are having involved in one way or another in Western Balkans. Of course, when it comes to the United States, it is always necessary to remind ourselves that Western Balkans was a success story of the United States foreign policy at one moment. I mean, everything what was happening here in the 90s couldn't be stopped without their involvement. And that is something we've got to have in mind. And that is something I do believe that the new US administration is starting from. And the first signals we are getting from Washington from November 2020 and with the new administration of President Biden is that they are very serious in continuing where they stopped at the time. So there's been a number of very specific actions they already taken, which are giving us a kind of a hope that this kind of partnership will be enhanced and will be having a new dynamics in the sense that together with the countries in the region, we will be able to go forward in solving a number of unresolved issues we are having around. It was also very encouraging that even at the time of the electoral campaign of at the time, candidate Biden, they were eager to show these signals, not only after they got the office, but also at this phase where they've been sending out those statements about their views on certain issues related to our region, what even at that time was perceived as a very good signal. When it comes to other countries, of course, it was inevitable to talk about Russia, which is very much present in our region of the Western Balkans. We are all aware of that, and they are having a certain leverage for the certain issues which are important around by the fact they are a permanent member of the UN Security Council, where they are having that right of veto and where they could be influencing certain political processes here, what we have been witnessing right now when it was the discussion in the Security Council about new High Representative for Bosnia and Herzegovina. So these are the kind of situations where they could exercise their influence in that matter on political processes. But also, we all know that Russia is having all these historic, cultural, economical, political ties with these countries due to some shared history, I would say, and the population which is dominantly Orthodox around. So they are working on many, I would say, axes. One of them is, of course, economy. It's about the energy in the first place, where in the certain countries they place themselves as a very important energy supplier, investor, trade partner. In that way, we do know what are the possibilities to influence the processes. But rather than going into details, I would say that it was a while, specifically at the time when Montenegro was opting for the NATO membership, where we were able to witness how these kind of influences could be exercised around, where actually, I would say, the main focus has been and still is in the way that Russia is trying to undermine the partnerships, specifically of the countries with the region, with NATO, maybe with the EU in a certain extent as well, trying to show that these alliances are not stable one, that they haven't served the purpose, that actually, for example, for NATO, that it's not defensive and deterrence alliances, that it's offensive one, which is so, I mean, controversial, that kind of stance, because at one point it's a narrative about NATO being very dangerous from the point of Russia and the countries around that. But then on the other side, you are having a narrative saying, you know, NATO is obsolete, there is nothing there, there is no unity, there is no solidarity. But I mean, overall, when you draw the line, it's about undermining this kind of partnerships we are having. So what is new there lately, I would say, is the predominance of those soft power from that side of the world. And soft power is exercised in a manner which is quite new for all of us, I would say. It's about fake news, it's about disinformation, and again, I mean, region is there exposed so much for many reasons, one of them being weak institutions, the other being actually the level of education and media literacy and generally ICT literacy as such not being adjusted to these kind of challenges. So this could be a kind of space where these kind of stories like conspiracies and all kind of theories are going through quite easily. So that is a kind of a new element where we are having an influence which couldn't be neglected as we tend to do a while ago. That has quite an impact on what is going on in almost all the countries of the Western Balkans. China is a little bit different story because, of course, there it's another approach. It's approach which is through economy, which is the approach through the assistance in improving the situation with the infrastructure in the region. Again, a kind of very sophisticated approach through this Belt and Road Initiative, where China is playing on the fact that the region actually needs all these kind of investments when it comes to infrastructure, has no resources of its own, so we've got to turn towards foreign investors. And they've been very clever in offering all these kind of, at the first sight, very favorable conditions for different financial assistance. And then on the second side, of course, we are living what we are living right again here in Montenegro with the debts with all the problems which are going together with that, and where again it is necessary to turn towards our Western partners to try the solutions for these kind of issues. So I don't believe that this kind of influence, this is now my personal opinion, is very sustainable, because it has been recognized as something which is jeopardizing economical situation, then of course social, and at the end the political situation. And definitely there is an awareness that we've got to do countermeasures when it comes to this kind of influence. When it comes to Turkey, of course, we included it here, but I've got to say that Turkey is perceived as an ally, it's a NATO member, and the cooperation with Turkey is mainly focused on these different economical issues. They've been doing quite a number of very successful investments around in the region. They are also candidate for the member of the European Union, so there is so many issues which are in common. But why we put it here in this report is the fact that in the last couple of years there have been some unexpected changes when it comes to their foreign policy, and we do believe that it would be wise enough to have an eye on what is going on from that point. Of course, in the report you are having much more details about each of these issues. And then the last but not the least important one, on the contrary, is the European Union, where we started from the point that European Union integration is something which is of the crucial importance for this region. It is not only because of all the benefits we put forward when we are talking about the membership in the European Union. It's more about accepting the whole set of values, doing the reforms, adjusting the system, what are the standards and criteria of the developed Western countries, what definitely would be having as an outcome better stability and security, what was actually in focus of this report. So we of course put a focus on these things which are related with slowing down the process of European integration in the region. There is a number of reasons why that happened, of course, on both sides, but still, as we are having the situation where each of the country is having that as its strategic goal, and that it has been showed in the past with other countries who became members that it's a very important step forward into ensuring stability and security. We just wanted to show the responsibility of everyone included in this process to try to give it a new momentum. A number of occasions lately, I would say, from this spring on, a number of meetings, summits at the level of European Union showed that the climate among the EU member countries might be changing in the face, I would say, of what we've been putting forward all these years, and that is the fact that we are the first neighborhood of the European Union, and every situation which is not very favorable from our point here is spilling over there, and we do believe no one wants that. So I would say on the other side, with the influences of different other foreign actors being so visible now in the region, that in Brussels and the European Union, the awareness of the necessity when it comes to their engagement is getting higher. And that is something which is also very encouraging. And of course that we all count on that when we are projecting our future activities in this region, where actually political and security situation is, as we said, not still at the level which could be considered as I would say, positive one. We are having still on a daily level issues which are somehow digged out from the past, from the 90s, which are used to further on polarize societies, not only societies internally, but also the countries among themselves. And that is something which is very much worrying each of and everyone, I would say, of us who were going through these years when everything was so much different and so much more dangerous. Still, we do believe that the potential for some kind of conflicts is very low. And what we actually are recommending is to keep it that way, in a way that we should be aware of all these critical points and be there to have a kind of approach which is coordinated, which is coherent as such, and which has sustainability in its core. So from that point also, we are trying to somehow put an attention on issues which might be the most important from the point of stability and security at this very moment, starting from the issue of national identity, which is very much in focus in almost all Western Balkan countries, which is used for different manipulations, which is used for raising the fears among the ethnic groups, and actually which is used as an instrument of political engagement, which obviously is still having very high influences on what is going on in every of the countries. Of course, there is a religion which is still used very much in some of the countries like Montenegro, even much more than we were used to make all these different division lines and to define all these people from the point of their national identity, which is, as I said, something we thought was very, very far behind us. Of course, we did have a pandemic, we still do have, and it seems that pandemic is having its very serious toll on the region as well, with what happened all over the world. That pandemic as a very specific crisis actually served as kind of instrument which put all our weaknesses ahead. That is at the personal level as well as at the collective level. It has been shown that even some of very developed countries weren't ready to have the responses which we as citizens might have been expected. But actually, in the meantime, these weaknesses has been resolved. Solidarity, which was put also in question during the first months of pandemic, now is, I would say, put in the core of all our actions, which are very coordinated from different instruments, from different international organizations, starting from UN to European Union to NATO, to all of them, and that is something which was actually needed and desperately needed in these conditions. Of course, as I already said, another weakness which come to the surface at the time of pandemics and everything which was going on was this, I would say, infodemic, or it was the inflation of all this disinformation and fake news, not only those related with the virus. Of course, they were there, but these circumstances were used to put forward also those which are having much more dangerous, I mean, if it could be more dangerous than the health of each of us, effects in the sense of political relations. And again, the narrative was of a kind to show that, for example, EU, US, were weak democracies, weak systems that weren't able to have the right responses, that they were divided, there was no solidarity. And then the others appeared with the solutions and alternative ways of linking the countries among themselves. The good thing is, if there is a good thing in such circumstances, that Western democracies were able to put together their resources and give the responses which were needed and which are better each day. Of course, we lost a lot of time, but still we are having now the response which could be considered as a positive one, as the one which is focused on giving the right chances to everyone in the world. On the other side, when it comes specifically to our region, what could be considered as a very important element when we are talking about these issues is the fact that these countries are characterized with still not very much developed institutions, that the capacities in almost all sectors are very limited, and that the only way we could be able to respond to such serious challenges is to have, of course, coordination and cooperation within the region and with our partners. In that sense, there is a number of already very successful examples how it could be done, specifically when it comes to cooperation with the EU, with the US. It's those kind of issues where political will was created to treat together, for example, some cooperation which is related with the police and judiciary actions when it comes to the fight against terrorism, against radicalization. I remember the cooperation we had when we were talking and working against having our people going to be foreign fighters somewhere, like in Syria. It was very successful, which actually showed that there are possibilities. And I do believe, and we believe in Atlantic Council, that we should do more to put these kind of issues where cooperation is possible, where it has been shown that we are able together to provide good results, to put that in focus on what is coming up in this region, and in that way to create a kind of environment where then other issues could be treated in the similar way. It's very important because actually we are having each day, as I said, situation in certain countries which is deteriorating in a sense, where all these kind of conservative, very retrograde political forces are coming up on the surface, and where I would say there is no, of course, democratic response of those who believe in different set of values. So in that sense, I think we've got to be aware that in the last couple of days, we did have a number of signals starting from what is happening in Bosnia and Herzegovina with this law on prohibited and punishing denial of genocide. We should be aware of what has been happening in Montenegro for a while now because of this resolution about Srebrenica, what kind of forces came to the surface. We should be aware of the fact that now again the project we've been all proud of, which is demarcation between Montenegro and Kosovo, someone is putting in question. So that all is showing the necessity to be alert each day and to have the response to these kind of things. I mean, the response which will be built by the people who do believe in the future of this region and who do believe that there are people and there are forces, political, civil, academic, which are able to find the common language. In that sense, we gave a number of recommendations at the end of this report, which are, of course, open for any kind of suggestions, as I said now, in the months to come, where the focus is on the fact that the presence and the active engagement of United States and the European Union is the I would say something which is expected to happen in the months to come, so that they would be able to put together a joint strategy for the Western Balkans. no one expects that someone else should be resolving the issues we are having. Of course, it's our responsibility, and the responsibility on each and everyone, wherever we are, no matter we are politics, civil sector, academia. And I, as I said, believe that there is sufficient number of people who are ready to engage on these issues with our partners. We should put this puzzle together, have the issues which are necessary to be handled, and have, for example, the EU coming forward with a very clear message and very clear intentions when it comes to enlargement, not the ones we are having lately when the negotiations with Albania and North Macedonia didn't take place. So we should be more straightforward on these issues, and we should be giving the impetus either from Brussels and from here by showing that we are committed to what EU negotiations and EU integrations really are, to go forward with this joint comprehensive strategy with, which might be a way to show that what we are feeling right now, the new momentum in transatlantic partnership, is having its test bed, I would say now as an engineer, here in the region. That would be, I would say, a fantastic opportunity to everyone, so our partners and ourselves, to go forward and to actually stop this trend of returning to 90s and returning to instability, because that is the only way how we could go forward with giving a motivation to our citizens and our population, which, as you do know, all public surveys is showing that they, in a huge majority, want to be a part of that Western world. So it's our responsibility to do the necessary and put all this energy together inside the countries and with our partners, and ensure what is actually the final goal here. There is no, I would say, final goal, but the goal for a certain extent of time, which is secure, stable, and prosperous Western Balkans, closely tied to the West and integrated to the EU. No dates here, of course, and we agree that dates are not something which should be put forward, but what is more important is the engagement and the actions. And then we are convinced it will be effectuated by the real things after a time which could be considered as optimal for each of us. But the processes are the ones which matter. So I didn't go into much of the details, as you do have the text, and there is everything here. Numbers, examples, also some kind of evaluation of a situation in each of the countries. But of course, we are here very much open for your questions, your suggestions, and I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Pejanović. I just want to mention briefly, before I open the discussion to all of you, that, of course, we invited each representative of the diplomatic corps here in Montenegro. Unfortunately, some of them are were unable to come. It is really a pity to not have all of those who are mentioned in the report to be here and to open the discussion and to be frank and open about each and every aspect and issue that is put here together. But hopefully we'll have that opportunity somewhere along the line in the next months, and maybe at the To Be Secure forum as well. So I would like to give floor to you, to all of your questions, comments, any suggestions that you might have to what you heard today or read in the paper. So please, don't be shy.
I'm not shy.
Of course, please.
Thank you. Thank you for having
Just a moment, if you can introduce yourself and...
I'm Ilber Hüsam, ambassador.
Because of the live stream, so can everybody...
Thank you for having me here. I'm Ilber Hüsam, ambassador of Kosovo. It's very nice that you're putting together a report and all of us to comment it. I think it's an important report in a proper time. Thank you for putting some elements that mention Kosovo, especially in the part that explains that there is a limited capacity of the Russian influence in Kosovo and Albania due to the perceptions of the majority of population and stable foreign policy due to the last decades. But there is a capacity for limited influence, mostly through international organizations, namely through UN, and mostly in enclaves and mostly in the north. And I'm speaking this as a former national coordinator for the north. That have to be in mind. I think in the section of the non-Western actors, a suggestion, maybe there is a place for Iran after the Turkey. After all, Turkey is in NATO, so probably there's a relation within the family, and Iran has some capacity to be present with its own agenda. And third, when mentioning borders, I think I lacked the point about a project that might have a potential to disturb all of us in terms of borders, and that the project of Serbian World, Srpski Svet, and all, well, okay, and all non-papers that come within it. So I think this is an important development and that can bring some challenging dynamics. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe that all of your suggestions and comments are very constructive. I believe that in the section about Serbia, we have mentioned the Srpski Svet and all of the aspects of that security challenge. It is not, of course, mentioned again in the final thoughts, but we're still waiting to see how that, of course, can develop. Thank you. Yes, please. Here.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Radu Gorinčo, charge from Romania Embassy. Thank you for very interesting report. I will study it. I will read it for sure. But my preliminary findings, if I can ask you, so it is the first report. You are going to continue, yeah? And first point is, are you going to address some recommendation to decision makers? I mean, what's the purpose of a report beside of presenting the situation as such developments? I mean, do you have some far-reaching objective in this report to achieve, not only maybe in Montenegro, but for the other countries here? And my second question, by this comprehensive strategy you mentioned in the conclusions for the Western Balkans, what do you mean more exactly? Because mixing EU and NATO, or not mixing, but bringing together partners from EU and NATO for future development of Western Balkans, of course, makes sense. Still, Montenegro is a member, as well as Albania and North Macedonia, and as a member, you have some strong guarantee and some obligations, not only to, how to say, to assess, but also to contribute to security in the region. So from these perspectives, how, and from your former capacity as official, how do you see, I mean, Montenegro capacity to bring more security in the region, together with other allies here, in terms of this strategy, comprehensive strategy you are talking? Maybe, I mean, in the Black Sea region, where Romania is playing a role, we have different formats of cooperation of both member states and non-member states. Bucharest 9, or be it Black Sea cooperation, be it different other formats, we are talking, or trilateral formats. If Turkey, if Poland, we are consulting together, we are reaching some agreements internal, and after that we are coming back with some conclusions, some points on NATO agenda. So what could Montenegro come on NATO agenda from this regional framework? Thank you so much, and good luck.
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, to Ambassador of Kosovo, of course, we did went through what you called Srpski Svet very extensively. I mean, what you mentioned, very extensively. As you do know, it's has become a kind of a challenge for a number of countries in the region. And here in Montenegro, again, we are in a position to be directly exposed to all what have been linked with that kind of concept, which is, by the way, as we all know, not original one. It's a kind of a copy of something that has been tried on other places of the world with not that kind of success, but with the potential to cause a number of troubles. And that is why we do believe that Montenegro now being in a position to be directly exposed, on the other side, of course, Bosnia and Herzegovina, we are very much committed to go through it and to see the right way to stop any kind of tendencies which might undermine what is the stability, security, and sovereignty of Montenegro in the first place. How we will do that? Of course, in discussion and cooperation with the decision makers. It's not always possible, but there are the ways. And we are looking very much forward to the next To Be Secure Forum, because usually this is the place where we do have this kind of participation, not only us who are from, I don't know, civil sector, academia, diplomatic world, but also decision makers. And we put forward To Be Secure Forum with that intention, as a kind of platform where all stakeholders could discuss together. So our intention is to use this report for the discussions with everyone next October. It should be in October. Hopefully the situation will be of the kind to have the real physical discussion, but even if not, we'll find a way. And definitely that will be the opportunity to give these recommendations directly. After every To Be Secure Forum, we are giving these recommendations in a written form as well, sending it to all different addresses, and we'll do this time as well. You asked about the NATO cooperation and actually the role and capacity of Montenegro to contribute towards the stability and the NATO engagement in the region. You know, at the time when we were advocating our NATO membership, that was one of the principal points. We did believe then, and we still believe, that Montenegro is having this internal capacity to export the stability. There are some issues now, of course, we are all witnessing, but still, overall, the population of Montenegro is very much aware how important NATO membership is and how important it is to have stable not only Montenegro but also the countries around. So from that point, Montenegro was very active when it came to the membership of North Macedonia. I do believe that our contribution was very visible at the time. We are also very visible when it comes to different NATO engagements which are around, starting from Kosovo to Bosnia and Herzegovina. There are some flaws, but I do believe they won't sustain, that it will be changes there. On the other side, you do know that NATO as such is very much engaged everywhere, even in Serbia. We do know these numbers about the activities and about the projects and cooperation. And we do intend through different channels to export that kind of thinking, why the NATO engagement is important for security and stability. We do believe that these kind of discussions will have its consequences also on the new NATO 2030 vision, where also we expect NATO, through its cooperation with the EU, which is also at the highest level, to take into consideration what is necessary to have as a forms of cooperation with the countries in the region of Western Balkans.
Thank you. I believe that Ambassador Reinke would like to have a comment.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm Judy Reinke. I represent the United States in Montenegro, and I'm delighted to be part of the forum. I do wish more of our colleagues could be here, but I think that you probably have a good audience online. From my perspective, I'm delighted that the Atlantic Council of Montenegro took the initiative to assemble this document, basically to put in writing some of the things we talk about around the region, but sometimes the concrete nature of the security challenges and also even opportunities are missed until you put it in writing. So thank you for that intellectual undertaking, because I think it's very well done. And there are things we'll debate, and I think there are things that will be amended. As Professor Pejanovic said, this is the first version. I'm quite sure you'll continue to work through these themes as you prepare for the To Be Secure conference, which I know we really look forward to from the United States side. Couple things, and maybe they're quibbles, but some of them are important to me. I appreciate that you pointed out the role of my country, the United States, historically in this region, and also more recently. Of course, I speak mostly to Montenegro, since that's where I have a mandate, and I don't presume to speak for the entire region, but some observations. One, I really do feel it's important to mention is that I think it's perhaps overstated or inaccurate to refer to the United States as isolationist, you know, in the previous administration. I understand why there's a perception, but to be more precise, at that time, the administration was focusing on certain multi-party and multi-state organizations, which were less effective and efficient at achieving our own U.S. government goals and U.S. policy goals abroad. And I think with a set of clear eyes, regional and global participants in various institutions also understood that these institutions needed reform, they needed rethinking in many cases. So I did want to make sure I put that point out, and you've just made reference to NATO 2030, and I think that's an example of where allied participants are looking to enhance reform, re-engage on essential security and foreign policy objectives. The other part of that is maybe a repeated sort of comment that the United States has returned to the Western Balkans. I've been here through this period. The U.S. has not left the region. In fact, I really want to assure you, having seen it from my own seat, we remain absolutely committed, as we have since the 90s and through the early 21st century and up till today and into the future. This is a region we care deeply about, and the current trends worry us, but the overall trajectory of pursuing a European agenda that is Euro-Atlantic in nature with democratic principles is one we ultimately firmly support. And most recently, you made reference to a presidential directive related to the Western Balkans. Very important, the executive order. It looks like it's new. That, in fact, was under preparation even in the previous administration, and really helps to crystallize our commitment to stronger tools to address the challenges in the region, and most assuredly that involves addressing corruption and those things that corrode institutions. So thank you for recognizing that tool as part of the security fabric that the United States is trying to bring to the table. And then a last point about U.S. and European Union coordination, a very good point, and I know it's a conversation among different players, like why doesn't the United States and the European Union coordinate and come up with a unified approach to the Western Balkans? It's a work in progress. Let me assure you that our special envoy for the Western Balkans, the principal DAS, Deputy Assistant Secretary at the State Department, Matthew Palmer, together with his counterpart from the EU, Mira Lajcek, they're practically tied at the hip. They travel together, they communicate constantly. The pandemic, which you made a big reference to, Professor, has impacted the regularity of their personal engagement with the region, but they've never stopped engaging with the goal, and this is the point, with the goal of achieving regional security, and for those members of the region who are ready to accelerate their ultimate membership in the EU and participation in the Euro-Atlantic community. That's it. That's the goal. And I think we continue to make progress. Rereading this document will give us even more chances to enhance the way the United States participates. And I realize I have a last, I'm sorry, this is long. This is a last comment, which is I appreciate you bringing out those challenges, at least in Montenegro, that we really have to collectively address, and that is the reemergence of ethnically charged nationalistic divides. That's the challenge. A country which I've treasured as being a multi-ethnic, tolerant society, and it is. It really fundamentally is one that, for various reasons, and some of them you've specifically pointed out, including certain foreign influences, has started to re-energize the us versus them debate, and everyone is being divided through those kinds of pressures. And I think building a stronger civil society, getting people to think collectively about the mutual future of the Montenegrin, Montenegro as a sovereign country, that's an essential part of the security of this country and of the region. So I'm thrilled you brought that up, and it's worth exploring further. So sorry for the long intervention. I really am excited that this report is out. I hope people who are watching have a chance to read it as well. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Over here we have Ambassador of Slovakia. And just a short reference to the ambassador. Yes, of course, everybody will have the opportunity to read the report. Today will be put online. Thank you.
Thank you so much for inviting us to this very interesting event, and thank you for your very comprehensive view on the situation in regional Western Balkans. You have been also mentioning the 90s of the last previous century, which was the very sad story for the Western Balkan region, and we saw how danger is the tendency of the nationalism and what was the outcome of this tendency. Unfortunately, history is repeating, and we can watch also increasing of nationalism in these days as well. But I hope that the result will be a different one, that we are not going to face some conflict or war. Anyhow, there is a question if in the 90s the Western partners haven't been silent too long, then it was necessary. Today we are facing, first of all, this idea of the Serbian war award, and some attempts to make the triangle among the Belgrade, Banja Luka and Podgorica. It is sensitive towards the region generally, but maybe even more towards the Montenegro, who is the NATO member country. And my question is, I would like to add also that recently we have heard from Belgrade that this Serbian generation of politicians are the one who could successfully realize the idea of the Serbian world. So my question is, don't you think that the Western partners should be in this stage more vocal than it is right now? If don't you think that Western partners should be more vocal and more, let's say, comment the situation, what's going on? Thank you.
Well, I wouldn't be here if I would be believing that those Serbian politicians you mentioned could be successful. No way for that. As I said, there might be some flows around, but basically Montenegro and its citizens and population of Montenegro is quite aware of what we have achieved in the 90s. And I will remind you that we achieved what could be considered at the time as unachievable. So we spared Montenegro of all kinds of conflicts and atrocities. I do believe that potential for that still exists around. No matter that there are, of course, as in every society, certain political actors who are acting on the detriment of their own people and their own citizens. There are instruments and the ways to make a kind of line which can't be crossed. So from that point, I do believe that we all have the responsibility to show what is vital, what is critical, and what has to be done. In that sense, it's the fact that, of course, in Montenegro at the moment, we are having the government which is in a certain trouble, but we are having the parliament which is operating more or less successfully in the way, and where different initiatives could go to its effect in a way that show what are the principles which can't be overthrown. Of course, we are having certain issues with the civil society, but I do believe that this situation is helping to revive also the civil society, and that we will be seeing in the months to come more initiatives from that side. Of course, Atlantic Council is one who is taking the lead as usual, but we do believe that there would be the others who will join us. From that point, as we stressed in the report as well, we do count on a partnership with those who have been with us when it was necessary. So from that point on different foot, I would say this time we've got to go forward with what is important when it comes to European Union, when it comes to Brussels, and I agree completely with Ambassador that actually this kind of engagement Matthew Palmer and Miroslav Lajčák are having in the region is very important. It is something which gained visibility and intensity in the last couple of months, and we just can salute that kind of their presence and wish for more of that. But I'm quite sure that those two are understanding very well what is going on, and I do believe that they will be able to transfer their experience and knowledge to the others in Brussels and in Washington who are important when it comes to the real engagement in the sense of going forward in those kind of things we estimated and evaluated as being critical for sustaining whatever we have achieved. When I say that, then I am thinking about all necessary reforms which will be taking together the resources we are having on the issues which are important for this society.
Okay, thank you. We have a question over here, or comment.
Now it is a good day to you. Of course, first of all, I need to introduce myself, Branimir Jukic, Ambassador of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and really to thank Atlantic Council and Savo for really organizing this event, and especially to congratulate him on the choice of the panelist. Because Professor Pejanović really touched upon on all the issues, and believe me when I tell you that this is one of the most openly spoken conferences that I have been attending to, having in mind that this is, the mostly diplomatic corp. They say that the diplomat is always thinking twice before he says anything. But having that in mind, I would really like to have this brief, not a comment, but maybe the questions, for you. And only one statement. The Western Balkans is a success story. Really, having been so far, having in mind all those troubles, all those issues that happened, just have in mind from where we have been starting where are we now, and, and really to put an effort to have this, much, I wouldn't say better, but faster future, because really the future of the Western Balkans is determined, just to see how fast we are going to achieve that goal. Having that in mind, I would like to, to ask you one question. Although you have already, as I said, touched upon all these issues in your speech and especially in the report. But what do you think? What is the depth of penetration of this third party side? Is that irrevocable? What do you foresee it is going to be more or less of that kind of influence in the future, having in mind all those countries? And what do you assess that it would be the not desirable, but a realistic response from Euro-Atlantic community here in the Western Balkans? Thank you.
Well, thank you for your questions, not an easy ones. But now I'm reminding when everything started, and I said when it comes to Montenegro, of course. It started at the time when we were working on our NATO membership, and there were a number of people who thought at the time that once we are there and once it's over, then we will be having no more of this kind of influences. But of course, it has been shown that it wasn't the case. So as I stressed out and we put in the report, it's obvious that the final, I would say, intention and the final goal of all these influences is not Montenegro or any of our countries in the region, is an outreach to be far beyond the region. So it's going towards Brussels, it's going towards transatlantic partnership, and as long as these partnerships are showing their vitality and they are showing that they are so solid, this won't stop. That's quite sure. But now the issue is how we are going to do the necessary to make the effects of those influences less important. There is the whole network, of course, of different proxies, how it is done, and I remember at the time that we identified all of them, and the time that passed in the meantime, I would say, showed us right. They are still around. They are even more active, some of them, that they've been a couple of years ago. But what we like to do is to do our part of the homework. And our part of the homework would be to, of course, be steady on what is our commitment to those partnerships on the one side, and not only steady, but to be very, I would say, visible in contributing towards building those partnerships. Not just being shy or expecting to get something from the partnership, but be more active in contributing. Actually, what is somehow our obligations when we came there. On the other side, there is a lot that could be done from the point of raising the whole awareness of our population, what are the challenges and how they are putting forward. So when I say that, I do mean that our partners should be more involved in everything which has to do with education. We've got to do all forms of education, much more. Quite honestly, in the last years, it's not from yesterday, it's lasted quite a time. Education wasn't somehow in the focus. All these reforms we are having haven't been evaluated in the right manner, I would say, and there is so much to be done in order to have new generations ready to go forward with the challenges they are facing. Then it comes to media, then it comes to all this, I would say, media literacy, using of ICTs in the right manner. Just imagine what kind of challenges our kids are facing right now without the right guidance when it comes to using everything which is on their disposal. Anyone is dealing with that? I wouldn't say so. So there is a lot to be done there, and that is the part where actually I would be expecting much more engagement from our transatlantic partnerships and partners, apart from what is, of course, necessary when it comes to putting on the right foot all our economy as a precondition to go forward with any kind of substantial changes in the fields which are important.
Thank you. I believe that the discussion could go on for another hour, but unfortunately we don't have that much time. So I would give time for just one more question, and then we can conclude the conference. Anybody? Okay. I believe then that's the final thought on today's event. Yeah, of course, I will give floor for the final words. I of course expect everyone to continue the discussion online and at the upcoming events that the Atlantic Council is going to put forward. Just final thoughts from Professor Pejanović.
So first of all, thank you for coming. I do know that it's the period of all vacations coming up, and so many things also to be done in the last days of July. It's everywhere the same. But thank you very much for being with us. We worked on this report in the last couple of months, and we tried to make it really comprehensive and to put together everything which at the time we considered to be important. We based everything on the facts which were available. We try to give our insights into the situation in each of the countries and the processes which are going around, giving the recommendations which we do know are of the kind that could, of course, be further on updated and further on given in its specificity at the first time. And from that point, it's very valuable. It was very valuable to listen to your comments today, and I will make sure that in the preparation of the To Be Secure forum, we include every of the concerns you were having today for further discussion. And of course, I do expect you and your colleagues to engage with us further on in the coming months online, and to then be in a position in October to discuss these issues together again. Thank you very much.